Thank you to Skillshare for supporting the channel and sponsoring today's video. When it comes to minimalism, I have shared quite a bit of tips and advice over the last years on this channel. And if someone were to ask me today which minimalism rule has been the most influential in my life, what advice I would give to any minimalist out there, I would immediately think of this one thing. This one rule that helped me to greatly simplify my life, clear the chaos, and boost my overall well-being and happiness. So what is this rule and how has it helped me to live a more minimalist life? And of course, how can you start to apply this principle to your own life starting today? Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, this is a place where you can get weekly tips and inspiration for living a simpler, happier, and calmer life. So if you haven't already subscribed, be sure to join us by clicking the button down below. I've touched on this one rule very briefly in a couple of videos, but I've actually never talked in depth about it. However, this is the thing that I have always done ever since I started living a minimalist life about 8 years ago. And it is something that I still do to this day every time I make a decision, whether that is a purchasing decision, but also when I'm thinking about saying yes to a project or a commitment. And it's not even really a rule, it's more like a principle. And that is to ask yourself the following question: how will this thing impact my life? You see, everything we buy or say yes to or bring into our life will have its impact. Some of them might be really big and others might be smaller, but in the end, everything we own ends up impacting our life in one way or another, and often in more ways than one. Thinking about this before you make a decision can really be very helpful in living a more intentional life, make better purchasing decisions, but also to create a life that is filled with things that contribute to your happiness in a positive way. Now, most things end up affecting us in a bunch of different ways, usually some of which are positive and some of which are negative. So to help you get more of a sense of how to actually apply this to your decisions, I've broken it down into 8 ways that something can impact your life. And then the general rule is that something has to have more pluses than minuses. So more upsides than downsides. The first is money. Most things cost something. And so if you decide to purchase something, it will impact you financially. So you can ask yourself, what is the true cost of this thing and how will that impact me financially? So of course there is the initial cost of the purchase, but maybe there's also something like upkeep or maintenance or something that you will have to continue buying in order to keep using it. A good example of this is an espresso machine, because there's the initial cost of the machine, but there's also the cost of the capsules that you will need to keep buying for everyone who drinks coffee. But some things can also end up saving you money. For example, a reusable drinking bottle. This is a one-time investment that you have to make, but after that you will quickly earn your money back because you don't have to keep buying single-use items. Or if you bring your own coffee instead of getting takeaway coffee. So ask yourself how this thing will impact you financially. Will it make things more expensive, less expensive? Will it have a monthly fee? Will it add to your debt? Things like that. Now, just to be clear, even if something ends up costing you money, that doesn't mean that you can't decide to do it, because good things sometimes cost money. So this is only one facet of the 8 to take into consideration when you make your decision. The next is time. Usually with things that we buy or things that we say yes to in life, it ends up costing us a bit of time, and even with purchases that you wouldn't immediately think of as time-consuming, might need some kind of cleaning or maintenance. An example of this could be a sweater that is very crinkly and that you need to hand wash and iron every time, versus a sweater that is very low maintenance. And of course, saying yes to a project or a commitment will end up with some kind of investment of time on your part. On the other hand, there are also things that can end up saving you a little bit of time. So they can help you, for example, to do an activity or a chore quicker. An example of this could be a food processor if you spend a lot of time in the kitchen. The next way that a purchase can impact your life is through stress. So basically, the things that we buy can sometimes make us feel more or less stressed in our life. And we can also use this principle for items that we already own. For example, a clothing item that doesn't fit you anymore might make you feel stressed, or something that is very expensive that doesn't get a lot of use might make you feel guilty. Basically, ask yourself if a new purchase will impact your stress levels, and if so, in what way. Another way that a new item or purchase can impact your life is through fun. And I've talked about this a little bit in my recent burnout video, because I think that fun is a little bit underrated. And so if something just brings you a lot of joy, if you love using it, if you love seeing it in your home, that is a big plus in my book. For example, getting a guitar. That's a big bird. For example, getting a guitar and learning how to play it, it'll cost you money, it'll cost you time, but it'll probably bring you lots of fun. So this is a big one to take into consideration. And of course, another important one is space, by which I mean the physical space that an item will take up in your home, because everything we buy will eventually end up taking up some kind of space. So this can help us to determine whether or not we think that that is worth it. This is a silly example, but let's say that I was thinking about buying an ice machine. It might be really fun, and if I were the type of person who now buys a lot of ice cream in the stores, it could even end up saving me some money. But I still probably would not buy it because of the huge amount of space that it would take up in my tiny kitchen. So ask yourself before you buy something, where is it going to live in your home and how much space is it going to take up? The next way an item can impact your life is convenience, and some items just have a really big upside of making our daily life easier. If an item makes your life easier, better, or more convenient, it's definitely a big upside. For example, if you are someone who irons a lot, then maybe investing in a steamer could really make your life more convenient. Or for me, I like to drink a lot of tea, as you know. And so instead of having to boil water and then having to wait for it to cool down to like 70 or 80 degrees, depending on the tea, I invested in a water kettle that can immediately get it up to the correct temperature that I need it to be at. And because I use that thing every day, multiple times, it's definitely a convenient purchase for me. Another important one that I think we might not always think about enough is health. So how is this purchase or activity or project or commitment going to impact your health? For example, if you agree to go to the park every Saturday morning with a friend to work out, that's definitely a big commitment, but it will probably also impact your health in a big way. For example, this is the biggest reason that we decided not to purchase a sandwich grill, because we both really like those warm sandwiches with like vegan cheese and aioli and stuff, and it's definitely not the healthiest thing to be eating. So we decided that we would prefer to have that be an exception, where you only eat that every once in a while when you go out and not invite that into your everyday life. Even though we like it, it wouldn't be good for our health, so that could be a consideration. Another way that something can impact your life is through what I call the spirit. And so by which I mean, how is this going to impact your spirit? How is it going to make you feel overall? This is a tricky one to explain, but for example, there's a big difference in how it feels if you buy something from, let's say, an ethical and sustainable store that you like to support, or maybe it's a thrift store or something like that, or if you buy something from a store that you kind of feel that you would actually prefer not to support. Or for example, taking on a commitment to do volunteer work or to donate to a charity is definitely a big commitment, and of course it takes some thinking about it, but it's probably also going to impact your spirit in a big way as well. So this is just something to take into consideration as well, how a purchase or a project impacts your spirit. Now I'm going to make things a bit more clear by using an example of a recent purchase that I made. But first, a quick word for today's sponsor. Thank you so much to Skillshare for continuing to support my channel. Skillshare is an online learning community for creative and curious people. They have thousands of classes on so many different topics having to do with art, cooking, business, photography, writing, designing, and a lot more. Basically, whatever you want to learn about, you can find classes on it on Skillshare, and you can use them to get inspired, learn new things, develop new skills. And they have classes for all levels, and they are constantly adding new ones too, so there's a lot to see and explore. One class that I would really recommend is called Indoor Gardening, Grow Houseplants, Veggies and Herbs by Ekta Chaudhary. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. This is a short and sweet class. I thought this was so much fun and very inspiring, and I actually learned a lot of new things around plant care. It's perfect for beginners as well. The classes on Skillshare are very fun and easy to watch. They are usually under 60 minutes long, so it's just quite easy to consume. They also break them up into small sections, and there are no ads. And I saw that they also now have live classes, so I really recommend checking them out if you want to learn something new, explore your creativity, or deepen existing skills. The annual subscription is less than $10 a month, and the first 1,000 people to click my link in the description box will get a free trial of premium membership. So big thanks to Skillshare. Let's continue with the video. Now let's take these 8 different ways that something can impact your life and apply them to an example so you can see how I actually use this principle in my life. At the end of last year, we got a new espresso machine. So we switched our old Nespresso capsule machine to an entry-level espresso machine that you can actually see right there. In terms of money, it was a plus for us because, of course, there's the initial cost of the machine itself, but we will quickly earn that money back because making coffee is now a lot cheaper. In terms of time and convenience, it was a slight minus because we used to be able to have coffee with the press of a button, and now we have to grind our own beans, and there's just more involved in the process of making the espresso, doing the cleaning afterwards. But since we both only drink 1 cup of coffee per day, this didn't really bother us. In terms of health, stress, and space, not much of a difference. In terms of fun, it is a big plus. I'm having so much fun playing barista and learning all about different beans and different ways of preparing coffee, and the taste of the coffee has also increased dramatically. And for spirit, also a big plus because this way of making coffee generates a lot less waste. So that just makes me feel better about the whole thing overall. So overall, the purchase has more pluses than minuses, and the pluses also are just more important for me. So just taking some time to quickly think about these 8 factors made me feel sure that this would be a good thing to invest in. If you've enjoyed this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, because these things really do help to support the channel. And if you want more videos from me, you can always join us on Patreon. Patreon is another platform where I post videos that are very different from the ones on YouTube. They're often more casual, more personal, and I talk about all kinds of things over there. I just posted a really fun monthly tea time chat video, and the video before that was about setting boundaries and how to be less of a people pleaser. We have a really fun, lovely, and supportive community of people over there, and there are many videos already on, so if you feel like binging some content, that's where you can go. As always, questions, comments, conversations down below. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Have a lovely day, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.